Thank you. So first of all, read from Srila Prabhupada. Uniting Two Worlds, Volume 6 of Srila Prabhupada's 6th-volume biography. And this chapter is entitled At Home in Vrindavan. The devotees were deeply touched that Srila Prabhupada's coming was at least partially in recognition of their preaching. They resolved to reciprocate with him while he was there by holding a book distribution marathon. If they showed him their dedication by preaching, maybe he would stay a long time. So where was he visiting? Back to Dharmaraj. At 2 o'clock the next morning, Bhagavan and Tamal Krishna went into Srila Prabhupada's quarters to attend him. Srila Prabhupada, who had just awakened, was very pleased to see Bhagavan, his leader from southern Europe. This was why he had come to the West, to be with his preachers and to be encouraged by them. Tamal has brought me with great difficulty, said Srila Prabhupada. It was the correct thing, I thought. What is the use of dying? Better to come. Sri Krishna Balaram has placed me in the care of Radha Gokulananda. Bhagavan presented Srila Prabhupada with some newly printed books, an Italian Bhagavad Gita as it is, another volume of Srimad Bhagavatam in French, and other books in Dutch. The total book distribution in Europe, Bhagavan reported, had surpassed that of America. Tamal, did you hear that? Prabhupada asked. This is my life. Come here. Srila Prabhupada began rubbing Bhagavan's head and tears fell from his eyes. You have no problems, he said to Bhagavan. In his own work on Srila Prabhupada's behalf, Bhagavan had been encountering a rough period, but when Srila Prabhupada said you have no problems, he took it that if he persevered, everything would be all right. As long as he stayed engaged in devotional service, he had no more problems. For Bhagavan, there was no need for Prabhupada to say more. Prabhupada's order was already his heart and soul. But now that order and Srila Prabhupada's love entered deep into his heart. Srila Prabhupada's mood was one of pure thankfulness. Without his usual critical instructions, he simply wanted to be with his devotees and encourage them. This book, said Srila Prabhupada, these books are all the mercy of my Guru Maharaj. No author throughout the world has written so many books. Shakespeare, Milton, Dickens, neither of their books have been so widely read or with such appreciation. So how many books did Prabhupada write? Within about 11 years, 90 books. And not just like writing some garbage novel of the deepest philosophy and encouraging readers to scrutinizingly study them. And how many books have been distributed up to date? More than 500 million. So that's no small thing.
Most of them about 2 million in Scotland.
Sorry?
Most of them about 2 million in Scotland.
Yeah, at least 2 million in Scotland. I don't know if there's any way we could ever calculate, but certainly at least 2 million. Srila Prabhupada ki
Jai.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 5, Chapter 18, entitled The Residents of Jambudvip Offer Prayers. I don't think we read the summary of the chapter. I think we'll read that just to set the scene. In this chapter, Shukadeva Goswami describes the different varshas of Jambudvip and the incarnation of the Supreme Lord worshipped in each. The predominating ruler of Bhadrashva Varsha is Bhadrashrava. He and his many servants always worship the incarnation known as Lord Hayagriva. At the end of each kalpa, when the demon Anjana steals the Vedic knowledge, Lord Hayagriva appears and preserves it. Then he delivers it to Lord Brahma in the land known as Harivarsha. The exalted devotee Prahlad Maharaj worships Lord Nrsingadev. The appearance of Lord Nrsingadev is described in the 7th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. Following in the footsteps of Prahlad Maharaj, the inhabitants of Harivarsha always worship Lord Nrsingadev to receive from him the benediction of being engaged in his loving service. In the tract of land known as Kirtimala Varsha, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Rishikesh, appears in the form of Cupid. The goddess of fortune and the demigods living there engage in his service day and night, manifesting himself in 16 parts. Lord Rishikesh is the source of all encouragement, strength, and influence. The conditioned living entity has the defect of being always fearful, but simply by the mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he can rid himself of this defect of material life. Therefore, the Lord alone can be addressed as Master. In the tract of land known as Ramyakavarsh, Manu and all the inhabitants worship Matsyadev to this very day. Matsyadev, whose form is pure goodness, is the ruler and maintainer of the whole universe, and as such he is the director of all the demigods, headed by King Indra. In Hiranmaya Varsh, Lord Vishnu has assumed the form of a tortoise, Kurmamurti, and is worshipped there by Aryama, along with all the other residents. Similarly, in the tract of land known as Uttarakura Varsha, Lord Srihari has assumed the form of a boar, and in that form he accepts service from all the inhabitants living there. All the information in this chapter can be fully realized by one who associates with devotees of the Lord. Therefore, in the Shastras, it is recommended that one associate with devotees. This is better than residing on the banks of the Ganges. In the hearts of pure devotees reside all good sentiments as well as all the superior qualities of the demigods. In the hearts of non-devotees, however, there cannot be any good qualities, for such people are simply enchanted by the external illusory energy of the Lord. Following the footsteps of devotees, one should know that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the only worshipable deity. Everyone should accept this proposal and worship the Lord. As stated in Bhagavad Gita 15:15, Vedaishya sarva aham eva vedya. The purpose of studying all Vedic literature is to worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. If, after studying all the Vedic literature, one does not awaken his dormant love for the Supreme Lord, it is to be understood that he has labored for nothing. He has simply wasted his time. Lacking attachment for the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he remains attached to family life in this material world. Thus, the lesson of this chapter is that one should get out of family life and to completely take shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord. Well, a lot in this chapter. Okay, so we'll go on to the actual verse, which is verse 3. Aho Vichitram Bhagavad Vichestitam Aho Vichitram Bhagavad Vichestitam Gnantam Jano Ayam Hi Mishan Na Pashyati Gnantam Janoyam Hi Mishan Na Pashyati Jayan Asad Yarhi Vikarma Sevitum Jayan Asad Yarhi Vikarma Sevitum Nihritya Putram Pitaram Jivasati Jivishati Jivashati. Get it right third time. Jivishati. Almost right. It's as good as you're getting. Oh Vichitram Bhagavad Vichestitam. Oh Vichitram Bhagavad Vichestitam. Nantam Janoyam Hi Mishan Pashyati. Nantam Janoyam Hi Mishan Pashyati. Tayan Sadyarhi Vikarma Sevitum. Jayan Sadyarhi Vikarma Sevitum. Nihritya Putram Pitaram Jijivishati. Aho Vichitram Bhagavad Vichestitam. Gnantam Janoyam Hi Mishan Pashyati. Jayan Asadyarhi Vikarma Sevitum. Nihritya Putram Pitaram Jijivishati. Please chant.
Aho Vichitram Bhagavad Vichestitam. Nantam Jaloyam Hi Mishanda Pashyati. Jayan Asadyari Vikama Sevitam. Nihritya Putram Pitaram Jijivashati.
Aho Vichitram Bhagavad Vichestitam. Nantam Janoyam Hi Mishan Pashyati. Jayan Asadyarhi Vikarma Sevitam. Nihritya Putram Pitaram Jijivashati.
Aho Vichitram Bhagavad Vichestitam. Yanantam Janoyam Hi Mishan Pashyati. Jayan Ashajari Vikarma Sevitum. Nirjitputram Pitaram Jijivishati.
Yeah, thanks. Ho, alas, Vichitram, wonderful, Bhagavad Vichestitam, the pastimes of the Lord, Nantam, death, Jana, a person, Ayam, this, he, certainly, Mishan, all those seeing, Apashyati, does not see, Jayan, thinking about, Asat, material happiness. Yarhi, because. Vikarma, forbidden activities. Sevitum, to enjoy. Nirhritya, burning. Putram, sons. Pitaram, the father. Jijivi Shati, desires a long life. Translation: Alas, how wonderful it is that the foolish materialist does not heed the great danger of impending death. He knows that death will surely come, yet he is nevertheless callous and neglectful. If his father dies, he wants to enjoy his father's property, and if his son dies, he wants to enjoy his son's possessions as well. In either case, he heedlessly tries to enjoy material happiness with the acquired money. Please repeat, alas, how wonderful it is that the foolish materialist does not heed the great danger of impending death. He knows that death will surely come, yet he is nevertheless callous and neglectful. If his father dies, he wants to enjoy his father's property. And if his son dies, he wants to enjoy his son's possessions as well. In either case, he heedlessly tries to enjoy material happiness with the acquired money. Prabhupada's purport. Material happiness means to have good facilities for eating, sleeping, sexual intercourse, and defense. Within this world, the materialistic person lives only for these four principles of sense gratification, not caring for the impending danger of death. After his father's death, a son tries to inherit his money and use it for sense gratification. Similarly, one whose son dies tries to enjoy the possessions of his son. Sometimes the father of a dead son even enjoys his son's widow. Materialistic persons behave in this way. Thus, Sukadeva Goswami says, how wonderful are these pastimes of material happiness transacted by the will of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In other words, materialistic persons want to commit all kinds of sinful activities, but without the sanction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, no one can do anything. Why does the Supreme Personality of Godhead permit sinful activities? The Supreme Lord does not want any living being to act sinfully, and he begs him, through his goodest conscience, to refrain from sin. You see the Lord so humble. But when someone insists upon acting sinfully, the Supreme Lord gives him the sanction to act at his own risk. Matas matir jananam ganam apohanam cha. No one can do anything without the sanction of the Lord. But he is so kind that when the conditioned soul persists in doing something, the Lord permits the individual soul to act at his own risk. According to Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, sons always outlive their fathers in other planetary systems and other lands in this universe, especially in Swargaloka. However, on this planet, Earth, a son often dies before his father, and materialistic father is pleased to enjoy the possessions of his son. Neither the father nor the son can see the reality that both of them are awaiting death. When death comes, however, all their plans for material enjoyment are finished. Om Jnana-timarantasya Gyanjana-salakaya Chakshurmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri-Gurave Namaha Tam Karoti Vachalam Bhagam Lagate Girim Yadkripatamam Bande Shigrim Dinataranam Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Sadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Alas, how wonderful it is that the foolish materialist does not heed the great danger of impending death. He knows that death will surely come, yet he is nevertheless callous and neglectful. If his father dies, he wants to enjoy his father's property, and if his son dies, he wants to enjoy his son's possessions as well. In either case, He heedlessly tries to enjoy material happiness with acquired money. So we're reminded of this pastime in the Mahabharata. I wonder if anybody knows the details of it. I know the essence of it. When Yamaraj had disguised himself and the 5 Pandavas approached this lake for some water, they were thirsty. And he said, "This is my lake, you can take as much water as you like from this lake, but you must answer this one question. What is the most wonderful thing in this world? What is the most amazing thing in this world?" Does anybody remember what the other Pandavas said? Apart from Yudhishthira, right? He got it right. The other 4 Pandavas went ahead first. Do you remember?
I thought it was the other's dad because they refused to answer the question. And then finally, usually had a series of questions, and then one of the questions was Yamaraja had a series of questions. And he kept asking different questions and different questions. And I think the final clincher was what is the most wonderful thing in this world. But the others had refused to enter into any dialogue with him. Because they just
take the water.
They just drank the water and down.
Yamaraja is the
Crane? Form of a crane. All right, thank you. Yeah, that's right. Thanks for that. So basically, when the Pandavas were in exile, one time they went looking for water, and they came across a lake, and Yamaraj, and then the Lord of Death, appeared in the form of a crane and said, "This is my lake, and I have some questions you can answer before you drink from this." And they refused. They just drank from it and died. Of course, they didn't remain dead. They got revived afterwards. Being Yamaraja, Lord of Death, then he can do that. But it was Yudhishthira, who's also known as Dharmaraj, and Dharmaraj, Yudhishthira is also the son of Yamaraj. So there's a bit of a connection there already. So Yamaraj is also known as Dharmaraj sometimes because he is the Lord of Dharma. He understands what is Dharma and what is not Dharma, and therefore this is how the living entities, when they make their choices in life, if they make some adharmic choices, then they have to suffer the consequences of that. And if they make some dharmic choices, then they're protected. They say the one who protects Dharma is protected by Dharma. That's a nice saying. And also I was recently heard that, that according to your ashram, there's particular Dharma you should follow. And if you follow another's Dharma, if a sannyasi tries to follow the Dharma of a householder, then he falls down. If a householder tries to follow the Dharma of a sannyasi, then that's a Dharma as well. So it's important that we understand what is the Dharma of the ashram we're in and follow that, and that we stay protected. And of course, the highest Dharma is Sarva Dharma Prityaja, that we do what Krishna wants. And as devotees, because I was just noticing at the end of this summary of the chapter, it says that lacking attachment for the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he remains attached to family life in this material world. Thus, the lesson of this chapter is that one should get out of family life and completely take shelter on the lotus feet of the Lord. So that's the highest Dharma. And in Kali Yuga, I think we were singing this song recently, weren't we? This song of the broker. What is the highest form of Dharma? Anybody remember? Kripa Prabhu was singing this song just before the initiations the other day. To chant the holy name of Krishna, loudly chant the holy name of Krishna, is the highest form of religion. Because it is enacting compassion for those. For us, we can chant for ourselves, that's fine, but it's considered that one who has a great cure for some disease, keep it to themselves to be a manager, just like this COVID. Imagine somebody found the cure for it. They didn't have to get injections, they didn't have to get all mental about it. They just had to take the simple cure and everyone could be cured and think, well, I'm just going to keep it to myself. I'm all right. If you want a cure, find your own. Then they would be considered a great miser, especially if everybody was sick and dying, and this guy was like, could walk in amongst a COVID ward and not be affected. We'd think, oh, this guy's such a miser. So we're not like that. We've got some cure for the material disease. When we say material disease, we talk about skin disease. And we talk about skin disease, we don't mean psoriasis or dermatitis or something like that. What do we mean by skin disease? You're being attached to these bodies. When we look in the mirror, we look and we think we see ourselves. But if you take that skin off, right, and then you put it on a little plate, it's a little heap of skin, you wouldn't identify with that, would you? Sometimes people get tortured and they pull their skin off. Very painful thing, horrible thing to do to anyone. But imagine your skin was just magically taken off and it was there. And then you think, oh, well, that's not me, is it? And then what's left is all the muscles and things. And so would you identify with that? Take those muscles off, identify with the bones. So what is the composition of the body? It's some various elements which are put together in some wonderful way. And Krishna explains it's a wonderful machine made of material energy. So almost the body is a yantra, or a machine. And we use it just like we may use a car, or we use a microphone. We use some machine for cutting the vegetables, or a knife and a chopping board. We use so many things in Krishna's service. The body is also Krishna's gift to us to use in his service. That is the best use of this material body. So this comment here, that lacking attachment for the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he remains attached to family life in this material world. That doesn't refer to devotees who are engaged in devotional service, regardless of what ashram they're in. They're giving up attachment because they're seeing everything in relation to Krishna. On the surface it may look, and there may be some attachment there, it would have to be heartless to have no attachment. There may be some attachment there to friends, family. But because we see them in relation to Krishna, then we're attached to them getting Krishna's mercy. That's how it transfers. It's just like we may have some relatives or friends who we feel that we've got some benefit from Krishna consciousness, and we want them to get that too. So we can even use our own attachment to benefit them and benefit ourselves, to develop a compassion for them. And in the bigger sense, we're all one big family. As they say in Scotland, we're all Jock Tamson's bairns. So Jock Tamson, who's Jock Tamson?
God.
God.
John Thompson.
Yeah, John Thompson. Did you know he was your dad? Are you there, John? So basically, because Jock Tamson is a very common name, so it basically means that we all have a common father. And not just the humans, all species of life. Bija Pradapita. I am the seed-giving father of all living entities. He didn't say that I am the seed-giving father of only the humans, and the rest are just some kind of wonderful mechanism that you can just slaughter them and eat them at will. I'll give you dominion over them so you can exploit them and chop them into bits and fill your bellies with them. He didn't say that. He's given, when you have stewardship over something, then there's some responsibility. So in the bigger sense, we're all related. We're all parts and parcel of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And as explained here also, he is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So Prabhupada explains that there's many personalities of Godhead. The Lord expands himself in many different incarnations. And of all these different expansions of the Lord, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, from whom all other incarnations and all other living entities emanate, is Krishna. So we need look no further. Doesn't mean to say we stop questioning. This is the bit about Krishna consciousness. We may find what you're looking for, but doesn't mean to say, okay, now that I've found it, I don't have to look any longer. I don't have to seek. I don't have to be introspective. Finally we find that there is such a person as the Supreme Personality of Godhead who has no other origin. There's no origin beyond that origin. The origin of Anadir, Adir, Govinda. Govinda is the origin of all. And Sarvakarana, the cause of all causes. So when people ask, well, who made God? Well, we can say, well, who started the Big Bang? And we say that Krishna is the cause of all causes. There's no cause beyond that. So because we're conditioned to cause and effect, this is the material laws of cause and effect. If we see some effect, we think, what caused that? Just like we see the leaves on the ground, and we think, okay, what caused that? The wind blew the leaves off the trees. And why did they come off the trees? Because it's getting cold, and the tree is conserving its energy, so it's not giving energy to the leaves, so they can get blown off. So this is cause and effect. But there's nothing which is causing Krishna to be. There's nothing beyond that. So, but our inquiries to understand Krishna more and more are still required so that we can understand and we don't get bewildered by the material energy. So Prabhupada says that the lesson of this chapter is that one should get out of family life and completely take shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord. So that's what we're doing as devotees. We're attempting to do that. And we don't actually have to give up anything, because the first thing we learn when we come to the temple is that nothing is mine. And if you really want to understand that, personally speaking, like some of us did experience, and we did that, is that you just give everything to the temple, then you can understand that nothing is mine, and depend completely on the mercy of the Lord. Of course, if we use everything in Krishna's service, then that's the highest type of renunciation. But we should be careful that if we're trying to surrender to Krishna, that we're not holding something back for ourselves just in case Krishna is not God. Then Krishna will hold back something from us just in case we're not sincere. So when we hold back, Krishna holds back, just like we know that story of Draupadi, when this great warrior, was it Karna? No, it wasn't Karna. It wasn't Karna, it was Dushasan, was trying to derobe Draupadi in front of the great assembly, which would have been, for a chaste lady like Draupadi, that would have been such a great shame. And this is such a terrible thing to do to anybody, especially such a chaste person. Some people, they don't mind to be naked in front of people, but if someone who's chaste, then certainly someone who's cultured, then for them to do that is barbaric, it's uncivilized. So she had no contest against Dushasan being a very strong warrior. And while she was trying to hold on to her sari, she was calling on Govinda. And of course, Govinda wasn't there to help her, because he's thinking, well, she seems to be thinking she can manage this on her own. She's holding on to her sari, so let her carry on, see how she gets on. And then she put one arrow up in the air and called on Govinda to help her, but still she was holding on. So it's partly surrendering to Krishna, partly holding on to some material security. And this is a great lesson, is that we sometimes wonder, why am I not getting Krishna's mercy? Why am I not getting a taste? Because we're still having one foot in the material world just in case it doesn't work out. And this is our material insurance. Rather than finally what Draupadi did, when she realised this was totally futile, she gave up both hands, because she knew she was going to lose everything anyway. She was intelligent enough to know that. So when she put both hands up in the air and completely depended upon Govinda, then he incarnated the sari, and as Dushasan tried to pull that sari from her, then it was infinitely manifesting to the point where he got exhausted. and if he fell down in a heap, not the sari. So these examples are not just like interesting little stories of some kind of historical culture. Historical may be there, but they're there as lessons for us that we shouldn't, as Krishna says, that we should surrender to him and do not fear. Why does he say we do not fear? Because he knows we're afraid to surrender. He doesn't just say that, out of some kind of unconscious part of just to fill in a few words in a verse. He's all knowing. He knows that we're afraid to surrender. And therefore he says, don't be afraid. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he says, just give this one life to Krishna and see the result. We've had so many lives, and here we are back again. We've had so many lives, not even in the human form of life. And finally we get a human form of life again. Don't waste it. Do the best thing with it. At least give one to Krishna. If we have to gamble, he says, generally a devotee doesn't gamble, but if we don't know, then it means whatever we do is going to be a gamble, isn't it? So therefore, we may as well take that gamble. So I'd like to ask Aholcha to make a quote on this one.
That was by Pascal. He said, if you gamble that God doesn't exist and he does, then you lose everything. He does exist and he does, then you gain everything.
That's right. So if we're going to gamble, at least take gamble on, if one of them's going to be right, then you're going to get the best result, isn't it? And even if there's nothing at the end of it, even if we want to be so kind of doubtful about it, then the way of life which has been promoted in the Vedic lifestyle is one which is actually a simple and sustainable, peaceful way of life. It's propagating a harmonious way of life. So, at the beginning of the purport here, Srila Prabhupada talks about the difference between animal life and human life. Proper human life is not just simply he says material happiness means to have good facilities for eating, sleeping, mating and defending. So this is the difference between human life and animal life. So animal life means eating, sleeping, mating and defending. Human life may have those aspects there, but it's got the ability to see beyond simply those animal propensities. And if we don't see beyond that and all we do is hanker to improve and polish these methods, for example, Prabhupada, he quotes, or he was saying that the animal, it defends with its claws or with its sharp teeth or some other unique method of defense. Sometimes you see living entities have some very weird and wonderful ways of defending, like they camouflage themselves to look like a rock, or they spit out some poison or something like that. There's some way of defending themselves, or they're extremely good at running. All these methods of defense. And the humans, what do they do? What's their method of defense? Missiles, yeah. We were throwing spears before, now we're throwing missiles. Where's the advancement? Still throwing something. And what's the advancement? How to become more adept at killing more people. So that's not advancement, that's regression. That's not advancement of civilization. And people have this notion that we were all hunter-gatherers. It's not necessarily the case, but this is the notion which goes on. And so previously, people used to hunt then. So naturally, there would be some hunters, and they would kill what they had to eat. And now they've become so advanced in this that they capture so many animals, herd them into slaughterhouses and kill them by the millions every day. So what kind of advancement is this? Simply because they could make a machine that can do it more efficiently? This is demoniac advancement. And Prabhupada says that If you sleep in a golden bed, right, people think gold is very valuable, so say you get a golden bed, top quality mattress, silk sheets, and whatever other kind of things make it very comfortable, and then you go to sleep. Are you lying there asleep thinking, I'm in the most expensive bed in the world? If you were thinking that, you'd probably awake, so you wouldn't be sleeping. When you're sleeping, where are you? You're somewhere else. You might be, for all you know, you might be lying on the dirt in the jungle, being eaten by a tiger. Sometimes that might happen in your dreams. So what is the advancement there? But the animal just sleeps anywhere. Or they get some apartment, they make some very nice apartment and some elaborate dresses and scents and all that to attract the opposite sex, simply for a few seconds of pleasure. Whereas the animals, they just get down to their business on the street. Not saying that humans should do that, but we make such elaborate arrangements over these animal propensities where we should actually just minimise them and they should serve their proper function. We have to sleep. If we don't sleep, then we can't function. We have to defend. If there's someone who's an aggressor, we have the right to defend. We are not propagating pacifism. We are peaceful, but in order to maintain the peace, sometimes there has to be at least the threat of a deterrent. Just like someone attacks some vulnerable person, if we don't, it might not be that you have the time to go up to the person and say, my dear sir, please desist from battering that old woman with the baseball bat. Do you understand what you're doing? He'll just hit you as well. So what would you do? You would find something and hit the person with it to stop them, save the old person, save the person from causing so much damage as well, which they're going to have to suffer for. So sometimes act of violence can be of compassion. If we can stop a greater violence, of course, in an ideal world, which we don't live in, by the way, then everybody would behave perfectly, and there would be no difficulty. We wouldn't need to have keys. We wouldn't need to lock the doors. We wouldn't need to worry because there'd be no thieves. Everybody would see, just like in Bhagavad Gita, it says that one looks upon another's property as pebbles or stones. Even if someone's got some gold, but don't look upon it enviously and think, oh, that person's got so much gold, I want that. I'm going to try and trick them out of it. Or that person's got a nice girlfriend or boyfriend, I'm going to trick them out of it. And so this is what happens. This is called envy, that we want something, and more than just we want something. It's not just we want the same car as that person. We want that person's car. We want that person's girlfriend, boyfriend, husband, wife, and that person's goods because we think they shouldn't have it, I should have it. And this is the reason why we're in the material world. We're thinking, Krishna shouldn't be the supreme enjoyer, I should be. So we're all here trying to be little Krishnas. We've heard of the kids' TV program Little Krishna. That's not us. But we're trying to be the enjoyer. So, and how can we see that we're trying to be little Krishnas? Because he is the supreme enjoyer, supreme proprietor and supreme well-wisher. So sometimes people like to take great pleasure thinking that they're the benefactor. I'm doing this for you. I'm doing this for all these needy people, or that they're supreme enjoyer. They like to get the fame, the glory of being some amazing person for some reason. And so, for example, we see that over this pandemic, some people have got very, very rich beyond wildest dreams. And because they're very rich, they think they have a right to then say how the rest of the planet, because they may be amongst the wealthiest of people on the planet, they think they've got a right to say how the planet should be run. It's like all of a sudden they become some kind of, what would you call that type of person?
Self-appointed authority.
Self-appointed authority, but even more so, I think there's a word for it. When someone decides that they're basically
Messiah.
a messiah, yeah, probably get some kind of messiah complex as well. Tyrant, yeah, it can lead to tyranny. But sorry, the word escapes me just now. But yeah, certainly they think that they've got so much money now. They've got the right to an opinion of how everybody could be happy. But just because they've got money, that's all. They've not got any more knowledge. They're no more knowledgeable by getting any money. It's not like as the money comes into the bank, they become more self-realised. They just become more attached to being the centre of attention. And newsflash is at the time of death, they realise that they were no more important than anyone else. We simply just think they just had a bigger illusion, that's all. So that the dream for them will be more of a shock to wake up from. Therefore, those who are humble, who understand that we don't own anything, nothing is mine. I come into this world with nothing, I go out with nothing, and the onus is on me to find out what's the best I can do with whatever comes my way. How to relate to people in the best way. And sometimes we make mistakes, but we think, okay, next time I'm going to try not to behave badly. I'm going to try to improve my behaviour. So this is living in a community has many benefits, and one of the benefits is that we have to tolerate. We have to learn to tolerate. We don't really have any option, otherwise we'd be strangling each other in our sleep or something. We have to learn to tolerate because we've decided we're going to live together and we're going to try to do something for Lord Chaitanya's mission and to propagate this knowledge where other people can benefit from. In order to do this, if we just get caught up in each other's idiosyncrasies and so forth, then we will lose centre of the goal. So these little hurdles, they say when you're running a race, if you're doing the 200 metres hurdles, if you're looking at the hurdles, you keep on knocking them over, but you don't look at the hurdles, you look at the finish line, and you don't see the hurdles. And even if you knock a couple of hurdles on the way, you just keep going anyway. So that doesn't mean to say, of course, we're callous and we just treat devotees like, okay, I blasted you yesterday, never mind, that's your problem if you're attached to that. It's not like that. Devotees we have to learn by our mistakes. And every day gives another opportunity to improve on that, to become the devotee which Krishna is looking for. So there's a book called Intellectual Animalism, which was published by Bhaktivedanta Book Trust. There's not too many copies of it, but there it shows you the horrific extent to which people go to in the human form of life, or the horrific extent that the misuse of intelligence can take one to. So simply because we have greater intelligence, then we have the responsibility to find out how to utilise that intelligence for the best benefit of all living entities. And so that advice is given in the Ishopanishad and the Bhagavad Gita. And if we study those, then we'll be able to, and take it into our heart and practice that, then we'll see the true meaning of everything, because everything has meaning. Things are not random in this world. There's a purpose for everything. Just like there's so many, Javit could tell us, there's so many things just growing around, even Krunabhavan, which have got nutritional and medicinal effects, but we walk by them every day thinking, that weed's unsightly. And the weed's probably thinking, there goes that ignorant fool again. He doesn't know I've got so much good to offer. So because we have forgotten the meaning, because we've become the controller, then we just give up knowledge of the purpose of everything. But as we become once again connected with Krishna, then we begin to see the purpose of everything. Everything's related to Krishna and everything has a purpose. Just because we don't know it doesn't mean to say there's no purpose. Out of our pride we think, I don't see any meaning behind that, so it has no meaning. This is a frog in the well mentality. If it's beyond my conception, it doesn't exist. Because all that exists is what is within my little well, my world. So, and here Prabhupada is mentioning that people are so blind to sense gratification that even if a mother, father, son, daughter dies and we can get some material gain out of it, then we're happy. It's like, oh great, my son was very rich and now he's died young, so I've got loads of money. And I'll just enjoy his wife as well. Prabhupada is saying this, and this is going on. The people are so blinded by lust that they have no scruples, no integrity. So this is the nature of Kali Yuga. That is, the more we become trapped by sense gratification, then the more our heart becomes insensitive to the suffering of other living entities. So this is the process of Krishna consciousness, is to wear away the stone heart by the process of chanting Hare Krishna. We associate with Krishna, who is supremely compassionate, and when we associate with Krishna through the chanting of his holy name, through seeing the deity form, taking prasadam, etc., we become purified. Because Krishna is pavitram, when we associate with Krishna, we also become pavitram, we also become pure. And that pure is not something which is, as Prabhupada explains, this Maha Mantra is not an artificial imposition on the mind, but actually it awakens or reawakens the original relationship with the living entity and the Supreme Lord. And then we realize actually we were always eternal, full of bliss and knowledge. We just became temporarily covered. So just like something may get lost in the mud, and then the mud dries up, and then sometime later on maybe you lose a ring, and then you go and find a metal detector, and by the time you come back, then you find it, and then you take it out and you clean it up, and then it's back to what it was. It had never been changed. It just became covered. It became out of our vision. So similarly, our true nature is somewhat out of our vision just now, and we identify with our temporary material nature. And it's not too hard, I'm sure we can all see, it's not too hard to understand that we are not this body, just like we were saying earlier on, we're not the skin, we're not the muscle, the tissue, the blood, the bones, etc. We're not the brain, we're not the heart. But this is simply a facility to allow the spirit soul to express itself in the human form of life. In the various forms of life, the living entity expresses itself in different ways according to its desires and karma from previous lives. It's all about karma and desire, deserve and desire. So similarly, we must have done something good to deserve a human form, and with our desires, by not misusing them, by using them properly, we've got a human form of life, and by fate also we find ourselves here, hearing this transcendental philosophy which can take us further towards Krishna. So I'll just finish with the question we started with in the beginning. It was mentioning here in the verse that how wonderful it is that the foolish materialist does not heed the great danger of impending death. Now you might think, why is that wonderful? That's not very wonderful, that's terrible. That they don't see the danger of death coming. But it's wonderful because, just like the question Yamaraja asked, Yudhishthira was, tell me what is the most amazing thing in this world? And he answered that the most amazing thing in this world is, does anyone know the Sanskrit? I used to know it, forgot it. He said, anyway, the most amazing thing is that at every moment the souls are flocking to the house of death, but a foolish person thinks they will not die. This is the most amazing thing. So when he gave that answer, Yamaraj revealed that he was not a talking crane, that he was Yamaraj, and he revived his brothers, the other 4 Pandavas, from drinking the water and dying of poison. So this is the most amazing thing, and wonderful. Wonderful doesn't mean to say it is great. It just means it's such a wonder that, despite the fact that we see impending death all around us, we think that somehow or another we're going to be the one that will cheat it. And then when we experience it, we realise, here I am again. So when we come to that point, here I am again, we don't want to have any regrets. Not like, oh no, I had another human form of life and I wasted it. I just got distracted again. I went on the merry-go-round of sense gratification and just allowed myself to become distracted all my life. We don't want that regret. So sorry if this is a bit heavy, and knowledge is good, because this is what's going to save us from the heavy regret at the end. We don't want to have any regrets. And although, as we were saying earlier on, is we may be fearful to surrender something we don't know, that when you surrender, then the fear goes. That's why Krishna says, do not fear, surrender to me, do not fear. So when we surrender to Krishna, the fear goes, and then the knowledge comes. It doesn't come first, and then you think, okay, then I'll surrender. So Krishna wants to see us placing a little trust in him, that's all. And it's not that we have to do complete surrender as of now, or else we're a failure. It's not all or nothing. If we're able to do a big surrender, that's fine, but we should do some surrender. Put some faith in Krishna, and Krishna will reciprocate with that. Ye tamam prapajante tamstataiva bhajamyaham. So as they surrender, I reward accordingly. So in this way, Krishna's he's not partial to anyone. Anyone who surrenders, he says, even if you're most sinful of all sinners, if we surrender to him, then we're free from those sinful reactions. He's the one who can free us from that. So in this way, we shouldn't think, oh, I'm too fallen. Krishna can't accept me. Sometimes Prabhupada's disciples would say things like, oh, I have to go to jail. And you would think maybe that was disqualification. Prabhupada would say, oh, Krishna was born in a jail, don't worry. And he was. And he says, oh, but I was dealing drugs. And Prabhupada says, I was also dealing drugs, because he was a pharmacist. So in other words, whatever they said, he wasn't taking it as an obstacle that, they could become a devotee. It doesn't matter. What was it they say? Every saint had a past, and every sinner has a future. And because we're all eternally related to Krishna, it's like when this is all over and we're back in the spiritual world, we'll think back and think, wow, that seemed like it was going on forever, but it was just like a moment, hardly even a moment in eternity. But while we're here and amongst a dream, just like sometimes you ever find you fall asleep and you get involved in some dream and it's going on for some time, and then you wake up and you realise like only 2 minutes have gone, or 5 minutes, and you think you've been there for hours. So time is about perception, and in the material world we perceive time in a certain way, but when we go back to the spiritual world we think, wow, that was over in a flash. Of course, while we're here it doesn't seem like that, so let's not think, well, okay, if it's going to be over in a flash, I don't have to hurry, because when it's all over, it won't make much difference whether I went back home to God in 1 birth or 100 births, but it'll make a difference while you're here for those 100 births. So let's just not hang about. Srila Prabhupada's spiritual master said that the material world is no place for a gentleman or a lady. It's like a toilet. You just do your business and get out. You don't hang around the toilets. It's a contaminated place. You just let it serve its purpose and then get out. So just stop there. Any questions or comments? What talks to you?
What was you were saying about the Sri Ramanuja gave of love, and said it works out to be 255 a second. That's including all the sea fishing, shellfish and stuff. And then the thing about you were saying they seem heavy. I was thinking this thing about gambling is actually quite heavy, because if you go into gamble and you say you've got 2 choices, one is this horse with 4 legs, and one is this horse with 1 leg. But if you back the one with one leg, you're going to lose right away. If you back that there's no God, at the very best you're going to be losing, because there's going to be nothing. So you, at the very best you're going to lose. But if you back the other one, maybe it doesn't come in, but at least you have a chance of winning. So that's heavy, backing the lose away from the word God. Well, I won't even bother going for that one. I'll just go for that, at least I can be sure of defeat.
So it is one gamble we actually can't escape. We have to make a choice on that, isn't it? The race has started. Since we're born, the race has started. And we're all going to get to the finish line. But that's a good point, that's even for someone who's gambling, they do their research, don't they? They get these form books and they read how many races has this one won, what's its pedigree, etc. And think, okay, this one's got the best chance of winning, so they'll do the work like that. And they put a lot of effort into it, and then of course, sometimes they win, sometimes they lose, because they're not not able to understand everything about all the living entities. They don't understand karma. Yeah, so that's a good point. Is it, we are actually under the illusion we think we have a choice. And we do have a choice, but really there is only one intelligent choice to make. There's not really it's not to say that this way is the only way and that's it. If you don't do this, you're a complete loser. But it stands to reason that if you're given knowledge of something higher, then you would follow that, not following something which is of a more ignorant knowledge or lack of knowledge.
I was thinking also you could say, well, if you win, if this horse wins, we're going to take this horse wins, we're going to give you everything. So, how would you do it?
That's true, yeah. That's a good analogy. Expand on it. So. Someone else have a question or a comment? Javed.
These issues, like for example, the questions of leadership. I always remember the pastime of Krishna asking Arjuna to decide what to do with Ashwatthama, how he has to take into account Bhim's desires and Kripa's desires and Draupadi's desires, and it's interesting that Krishna gives so much power of decision to all of his devotees, and wants them to take all of it into consideration. And this, you were talking about we've got the karma that we've been born into a certain society now. You mentioned that in the class. So I was just wondering if you can say something about how we are to understand that we've been born into this society now. That we're living in it. Maybe when we were born, you could say it was a different society to what it is now. Anyway, we're given like 100 years usually. So we've been born into a society that's like constantly going through so much like change of political and ethical perspectives. So should we take it that we've been born into this society, so we have to think, well, that we can't just isolate ourselves, but we've been given this karma to deal with. So to what degree do we need to accommodate all of the different aspects of like modern life as being our karma to deal with? That's my question.
So I don't know if I'm going to answer you correctly. I'll give an answer, and if it's not, then you can ask again. Even if we didn't create this mess in the world we may be born into, there's many messes going around the world we don't want to be party to, but still responsible people take it that it's their responsibility to be part of the solution, not part of the problem. So that's really all we can be. We can either be part of the solution or part of the problem. And if we've been part of the problem and we're trying to transition from that to being part of the solution, it may take some time. It may be we don't get to the highest ideal immediately. But generally, the more you being isolating yourself it's not been part of a solution, unless that is set as an example as to how people, for example, should start community living, as an example. But then that would also mean not isolating, you'd have to promote that. So the only reason we're doing, because we're part of a movement means it's moving, not that we're part of a stagnant, to isolate and just look after ourselves and just go organic carrots just so we're okay, and the rest of the world we'll just wait and see if there's going to be tidal waves, and we're up a hill anyway, so maybe we'll be all right. So we're not like that. We shouldn't be like that, because ultimately, as devotees, we're well aware that any day can be our last day. So we're not simply trying to uselessly, pointlessly trying to maintain life in a body for no purpose, just simply with no purpose. So our purpose really is to spread this knowledge of Krishna consciousness, and our somewhat retreating. We used to be very much outwardly distributing books and Harinams and all that, and it appears now we're more insular. But this insular is also developing something which we hope to inspire others to take up some of these sustainable principles. We're trying to learn them and put them into practice ourselves. We're developing. We're in very kind of early stages of it. It can develop a lot, and I think it will. But our purpose of developing sustainability is to promote it, not to keep it to ourselves. Whatever example we can be to help others live a more natural, harmonious, peaceful way of life and God-centered. Is that okay?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry, I went on class too long, so one last question.
I was just going to say, with Jared's question as well, should in your past lives. So it's a matter of saying, well, let's just go with that. My question in the sense that the positive way of looking at that is that you don't have to get frustrated at other people. Maybe you're taking to it the same way that others have. It helps you to appreciate how special and rare devotees are. And then you think, okay, well, I've been strategically placed here, and maybe that's why I've never felt like I could fit in. I really feel like I fit in when I go back to Vrindavan and Mayapur, much more than here, So, but for some reason, I've been plopped here in this body with these parents. So I'm like, I've been dropped behind enemy lines, and so now I've got to try and scurry back to whatever it was I was into before, and try and bring some others as well.
So that may or may not be fair. Also explain that we have to be careful about thinking like that, because we might think, well, we are part of the Lord's eternal associate entourage, so we can just be careless about our behaviour. There used to be this thing that travelling Sankirtan devotees could sail very close to the wind in terms of regulative principles, and what happens is many of them fell away and fell down. So they may have been considered themselves, Lord Chaitanya's inner associates, but where are they now? We don't see them. But even if the spiritual master says that of us, we don't think that. We think, I'm just actually the mercy of my spiritual master is all that I am. It's because of his mercy I'm here. We don't think, well, I'm eternal associate of the Lord, so I'll just breeze around like that, no problem. And if the living entities get the message, good for them. If not, it's their problem. No, we take the Lord Chaitanya is anxious that living entities get the holy name of Krishna. So this is the Yuga Dharma. So we want to relieve that anxiety from him. And to relieve that anxiety means that we sometimes take on anxiety for the Lord's pleasure. This is the purpose of taking on responsibility. Just like Prabhupada, he wanted to be free from management so he could write his books. And he had to get pulled into management time and time again and say, can't you guys just manage it? I've got so many books to write. But it was also so important for him that his young disciples didn't mismanage it. And we can see what a great manager Prabhupada was to write all those books, 90 books, open 108 temples, initiate thousands of disciples, world-changing, all starting from the age of 70. So this is very unique. So it's more auspicious for us to consider we're the products of the Spiritual Master's mercy. And what we can do is, the way to see it is that this is our Prabhu Data Desh. Prabhu Data Desh means? Yeah, so the place, Prabhu means the Lord, and Desh means the land. Data Desh means the land which He's given us. He's given us this place. We're here for a purpose. Just like, personally speaking, I was born in Scotland, and I left at the age of 20 to join the temple, and I thought, bye Scotland, I'll never see you again. A few years later I was back up here and been here ever since. So I think, well, just take it that this is where the Lord wants you to be. We could make an arrangement to go somewhere else, but what's the point now? Just stay here and just give the rest of your short life to Lord Chaitanya's mission. And if we do that, there'll be some tests along the way, but those tests will be there simply to make us stronger. So whenever we're faced with tests, even if it seems insurmountable, we can't understand it, we're bewildered, we're fried, we're out in the left field, we're cross-wired, short-circuited, whatever kind of name you want to give it, then just take shelter in the holy name. Don't give up that shelter in the holy name, and we will find a way through. This is our lifeline. Srila Prabhupada ki, Iskon Guruvinda ki, Shishikod Nitai Mahapashasha ki, Untitled Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Nitai Gaur Premanande. Lord Bhaktivinoda ki.